Hey everybody, it's the Poor Sports Seattle podcast. We are back after a 1 week hiatus. By the way, I mean just an insane week for me. We had floors going into our house. It was my wife's birthday. We got kids going to soccer practice. We got the whole life flipped upside down for this flooring project, and then a bunch of other things in real life. I wanted to get on. I wanted to talk about the Ohio State loss that the Washington Huskies suffered. Although you would have expected them to lose that game. I wanted to talk about the Seahawks and the Mariners. The Mariners made the playoffs. I wanted to preview the series against the Tigers. The last time we talked, I think I was talking about the Mariners 26-man roster, what I thought it would be. It did not turn out to be exactly like that. A couple glaring omissions, in my opinion. Cole Young got left off the roster in favor of Harry Ford, which I think is silly. Brian Wu gets left off the roster. That's obvious. I mean, I think the Mariners would obviously like to have had Brian Wu. I think everyone in the fan base at least, expected that he would be on the roster, and that there was a lot of talk about him pitching game 3 potentially. And then the Mariners they made it, I think, a somewhat controversial decision that I'm going to talk about in retrospect, but I'll tell you what I felt at the time also, which is they decided to pitch George Kirby in game 1, Luis Castillo in game 2. And I think you could make a pretty strong argument that George Kirby and Luis Castillo are the Mariners' third and fourth best starting pitchers, behind Logan Gilbert and behind Brian Wu. Now, obviously, without Brian Wu, changes the math on that a little bit. Kirby's probably your second best remaining starter. Luis Castillo's probably your third best. Bryce Miller's probably your fourth best. So it makes sense to have all those guys in the rotation. I'm not suggesting that one of those guys gets bumped from the rotation. But what I am saying is, I think one of the things about playoff baseball that makes it different from regular season baseball is that you try to give your best pitchers the most innings possible. And one of the ways to do that is to take your best starting pitcher, who, in my opinion, even with Brian Wu healthy, their best starting pitcher remains Logan Gilbert, and give him a chance at 2 starts in the first series. I think Dan Wilson got a little bit cute. Now, would I expect the Mariners to have necessarily won both those games if the rotation was set up the way that I think it should have been? No, George Kirby gave up 2 runs, but George Kirby pitched pretty well. The Mariners pitching staff as a whole pitched pretty well in game 1. I don't know that I would even put 50% odds that the outcome is different, that the Mariners win that game if they're only going to score 2 runs. But philosophically, I thought it was a mistake. And then Castillo pitched great yesterday. And Castillo pitched great. The whole bullpen pitched great. Another mistake I think the Mariners made, and I was tweeting, there's a guy on Twitter who, I guess if you go through my replies, you could find him, but he's my old math teacher from middle school who followed me on Twitter and now is like, I mean, really, really smart guy back then and a really smart guy now. But he was talking about this, and I agree with it completely. On the 26-man roster thing, I said Carlos Vargas has done a lot of run prevention this year, but it's not, the process isn't good. He's a guy that throws 100 miles an hour. He touches 100 miles an hour. He has 2 pitches that go opposite directions that are both in the mid-90s. That cutter and that fastball should be nasty. They should be missing bats left and right, but that's just not the reality. I understand. You watch a guy that throws 100 miles an hour and spent most of the year not giving up a lot of runs, and you go, well, that guy's got to be a dominant pitcher. But he's not. He's one of these rare guys that throws 100 miles an hour, and guys don't strike out against him very much. So, to me, the biggest mistake that Dan Wilson made in that first game was not starting George Kirby over Logan Gilbert. It was not starting George Kirby over Luis Castillo or Bryce Miller, or leaving Cole Young on the off of the 26-man roster, or putting Harry Ford on that roster when he's played, what did he play, 6 games or 6 plate appearances or something? I mean, the guy's had like almost no time in the majors. They seem to refuse to use him. And then they're doing stuff, by the way, in game 2, like DHing Mitch Garver, which to me is like, we're at an inexcusable point when it comes to DHing Mitch Garver. I would rather have Leo Rivas DHing. I'm not exaggerating, by the way. And I know Garver got a hit yesterday, and every time I make this complaint, he turns around and has a big game. So hopefully that happens again in game 3. But it is completely inexcusable at this point in the season, in my opinion, to be DHing Mitch Garver. I'd rather have Luke Raley against lefties than Mitch Garver against lefties. Is that... I actually would like to pencil that out, but I don't want to do it right now. It was my wife's birthday on Saturday, and so it's a rare year where her birthday falls on a weekend, and it's an especially rare year where her birthday falls on a Mariners playoff game. My wife and I have been together for 15 years. Our 10th wedding anniversary is coming up. We've been together for 15 years. She has never had to share a celebration with a Mariners home playoff victory. I don't think she's ever had to share. I don't remember what the road wins, what days they fell on, but she's never had to compete with a Mariners playoff game on her birthday. And then literally, like, we had to define our plans around, like, if the game, because there was like the flex period, and it was like the game might start at 1, it might start at 5, and then we finally found out, and I was like, let's try to get all of our stuff in Seattle and done in time to not only get back like relatively early into the game, but also miss all that. We don't want to be fighting game traffic to not attend the game. We had actually, the previous weekend, we had gone up to Burien my cousin had been in town to watch actually what ended up being Clayton Kershaw's final start, which I didn't think that he was going to start again. I didn't think he was going to have a start on the road. I guess I kind of wish I would have gone to that game with them, but we met them in Burien, like the in-between spot of Tacoma and Seattle, at a brewery. And then what I didn't know is that last weekend they were shutting down I-5 between like Kent and Federal Way or something like that. So it took us like 2.5 hours to get home. So I'm like trafficked out. I'm exhausted from this floor thing. Even though I'm not even the one putting in the floors, I'm like working a full day, getting off, and immediately we start moving furniture around. We're in a lived-in house. So I'm just exhausted. And we planned our trip around not having to fight traffic the whole way. And only to get home and watch the Mariners put in Carlos Vargas. And I think this is one of those things where I think people give Dan Wilson a lot of credit for being like a blend of old school and new school. The team obviously has some analytics principles at work, like the player evaluation, player acquisition methods. Certainly consider analytics. I don't know how much of the on-field stuff does. It seems like there's a lot of consideration for platoon splits and defensive value late in games, and the pitching rotation decision seemed to be somewhat based on the fact that George Kirby and Luis Castillo have struggled on the road this year and excelled at home, and Logan Gilbert has been good on the road. So it seems like these kind of advanced stats and splits and all that stuff has made it in, but somehow they have not made it to the point where the Mariners have stopped trusting Carlos Vargas, despite him being, by every underlying metric, not a very good pitcher. The only thing he's been good at, let's pull it up. Let me see if I can, Carlos Vargas Fangraphs. I did, by the way, the broadcast is kind of frustrating because, for a variety of reasons, I think, obviously, but A.G. Pierzynski is such a bad dude to have on a broad. He just comes off as such a dickhead. Not a surprise. He's felt that way his whole playing career and his whole post-playing career. Let's get some... Yeah, Carlos Vargas... The first half of the season, let's get some regular old stats in here. Come on now. Why can't I get to just like the splits that just have like ERA? For the ease of the listener, why can't I get to ERA? Jesus Christ. What do we got going on here? Why does it not have ERA? First half ERA, 3.43. Second half ERA, 4.73. He's been bad. He's been bad for a while. This is not new. These are underlying metrics that would have been predicting this for months. And to go to that guy in the 11th, game on the line, instead of Eduardo Bazardo, to me it's like you got too cute. You got too cute. There's no benefit. Also, by the way, Carlos Vargas has that mid-90s cutter. Like, use that more. Sure. There's got to be some pitching coach in the world that can look at Carlos Vargas and go like, this guy's got a ton of untapped potential. But that's not what we're talking about. A playoff game in extra innings. This guy should be at the bottom of your bullpen. Caleb Ferguson. I'm not exaggerating. Caleb Ferguson, who I don't think is very good, I believe is a better reliever than Carlos Vargas. I thought that was a tactical mistake. I don't like Garver at DH in game 2. It ends up not hurting the Mariners. Obviously, they win. Jorge Polanco, just has an all-time great performance. I think if the Mariners make any kind of run in this postseason, this one game by Polanco would be cemented as a heroic effort to go against Tarek Skubal 3 times and beat him all 3 times for, what did they say on the broadcast? Like, first time this year and 4th time ever anyone has had a multi-home run game against Skubal, and it's Jorge Polanco, and it's Jorge Polanco from the right side, which this year he's been good from that side, but historically his better side has been swinging from the left side. It was just an improbable and enormous performance. Cal Raleigh, I have yelling outside of my house. Cal Raleigh has a good, obviously hits a double, and Julio drives him in, and you hope that Julio's played so well in this series. He's 4 for 9, has a double, a home run, 0 walks, at least one really ugly strikeout, but you hope that this starts to rehab the image of Julio Rodriguez, because I think he's been one of the best center fielders in baseball all season. Obviously, the late season run helps boost the WAR total. He's better in the second half. This is a constant struggle with Julio Rodriguez, and whatever. I don't know if he's always like this, if he never changes, if it's always a tale of 2 halves, and he's always better in the second half, but he ends the season with 6 wins above replacement, you kind of just have to accept that, I think. So anyways, you no longer have the home field advantage. I think you probably have the pitching advantage, although I would imagine the Tigers will try to ramp Skubal up to pitch game 5 if the game's on the line. Andres Munoz, by the way, first time in his career he got 9 outs in 2 consecutive days. First time in his career, I believe. Did they say, was it the first time? First time in his career, he got 6 outs in a single night. Andres Munoz pitched amazing. Gabe Spire pitched amazing. I get inspired I just want to tell the Mariners to extend every guy that plays well. Don't you? I think Josh Naylor, people are very excited for Josh Naylor to potentially get an extension. What's Gabe Spire's situation? What's Eduardo Bazardo's situation? I think that the Mariners have a lot of contributing guys who I don't think are making a ton of money, and this is the nature of playoff teams, right? I'm sure there's gonna be a new cast of characters in that role next year. I will say, I would have liked to see another high leverage reliever acquired. That's easier to say than to do. The dude out of Baltimore I talked about a lot, Brian Boxer, I think is his name. But they are who they are. There's no sense in relitigating that at this point. Would you rather play the Yankees or the Blue Jays? From a talent perspective, obviously the Mariners themselves need to go out and win the next 2 of the next 3 games to advance. And again, like I said a couple weeks ago, the idea that me looking past the Tigers has any effect on the Mariners' performance is silly. Uh, if the Mariners, if you could draw it up yourself, would you rather face the Blue Jays in a 7-game series where you will have, where they will have home field advantage, where you'll play 3 games in Seattle and 4 games in Toronto or New York? You're not avoiding long travel at this point. Obviously, all the travel is going to be across the entire country. It's not as big of a concern in a series with some off days, but man, who would I rather have? Who would I rather face? I think I'd rather face New York, frankly. And especially, I think there's some poetry in the idea of Dave Sims, who I love. I'm on record as loving. We did a whole podcast. Me and Danny O'Neill dedicated a whole podcast to loving. I'm already going to send him a text when the Yankees are hopefully eliminated that says, sorry about your Yankees. I like you, Dave Sims, guy who called me because he heard me do a podcast and was appreciative. A podcast appreciating him. He called me to express his appreciation. Yes, Dave Sims, I'll be texting you. You will be probably not responding, but I will be texting you. Love Dave Sims. Would also love Dave Sims to have to call a Yankees loss in Seattle. Okay. Oh, I guess we'll close out on, because I didn't get my final thoughts last week on the MVP. All right. I think Aaron Judge deserves the MVP. That's my feeling. I think it's important that Cal Raleigh played catcher, and that's the reason. I might have already gone over this some. Aaron Judge had an amazing season at the plate. The fact that Cal Raleigh, who had 60 home runs, and that is a huge accomplishment, especially for a catcher. It's a huge accomplishment for anyone. The fact that he's even in the discussion is because he's a catcher and because he hit 60 home runs. If Cal Raleigh was a right fielder, we wouldn't be talking about this. If Aaron Judge was a catcher, we'd be, molding his face in bronze or sculpting his face in bronze right now. And he's good. I think Aaron Judge is certainly going to be a Hall of Famer. Frankly, I think that it's going to be hard to keep Cal Raleigh out. Like, how many guys? I don't think there's any guys with 60 home run seasons and no steroid allegations that aren't Hall of Famers. Roger Maris is a Hall of Famer, right? Anyway, Judge had an amazing season. He had one of the greatest offensive seasons of all time. Probably the best season by someone who does not have serious steroid implications. And that being said, I want Cal Raleigh to win. Of course. One thing I will say, there's a couple of frustrating things. I think a lot of the arguments against Cal Raleigh, I'll retweet them or argue against them sometimes just because I think they're done completely in bad faith. Some of the arguments against Cal Raleigh use the Baseball Reference wins above replacement, and there's like a 2-win gap. I've always preferred the Fangraphs wins above replacement calculation, and the reason is I believe it does a better job of considering home ballpark, and Cal Raleigh plays in the toughest home ballpark for a hitter in modern baseball, basically, and still hit 60 home runs, and still excelled at home, and played good defense. Judge plays okay defense. Cal Raleigh played good defense. Seahawks. The Seahawks lost to the Buccaneers, and it's this continued bizarre lack of success at home. They showed the stands a couple times, and it's just a lot of orange jerseys. And the Bucs aren't a team. I've had some friends that are Bucs fans, but the Bucs are not a team that travels like that. I don't believe they're not a team that travels like the Packers or the Cowboys, or that has fans all over the country like the Cowboys. So that would seem to indicate that whatever measures the Seahawks took to stop the stadium from being overtaken by opposing teams' fans is not working great. Um, and I know there was a lot of talk about this last year, and I'm gonna rehash it briefly. I apologize, but first off, should the Seahawks be stopping people from selling their tickets to opposing fans? Is there even a possible way to regulate that? I mean, I guess the way you would do it is like the way that some comedians are doing it right now, where it's like it has to be that person's ID. The ID has to match the name on the ticket, but like, how much does that start to make the fan the enemy, and how many people are actually responsible for this bad behavior? And you're gonna litigate a bunch of fans that may want to give their tickets away, or may want to sell their tickets at face value to Seahawks fans. I don't know. I don't know that I think that the Seahawks should be doing it, but it does seem like the measures they've taken are not effective. I do think that seems pretty obvious based on the distribution of Bucs fans versus Seahawks fans in that stadium, which is still significantly outnumbered. The Bucs fans were still significantly outnumbered by Seahawks fans, but you could hear there was a pretty strong contingent of fans rooting for the Bucs in those stands, and I kind of think the reason the Seahawks, this is going to be a little bit of like a draconian take on this, but the way you get fans to stop selling their tickets to opposing teams' fans is to put a product on the field that Seahawks fans are willing to pay more to see than the opposing team. Because part of the deal is Seattle's a good destination. If you're going on a sports trip, Seattle is a unique destination in New York is obviously a destination, but like I've been to Green Bay, Wisconsin, and I think it's an amazing stadium environment. The city's got nothing. That part of Wisconsin's got nothing. I'm sure there's something, but there's not like tourist attractions in Green Bay, Wisconsin that are not Packers related. And by the way, I was inspired walking through Lambeau Field and all of the effort that has gone in and the acknowledgement of how important they are to the community and how the community's embraced them, and how I believe in the mid 70s the public, this would be unheard of in Seattle. The public voted to spend more money on taxes so the Green Bay Packers could have a competitive payroll. You would never find that in Seattle. There would never be enough buy-in into a franchise to have that in Seattle. Some of that is because Seattle's got a bunch of other stuff to spend its money on. And also has a lot of tourism influx that is, or not tourism, people moving here, transplant influx of people who maybe aren't Seahawks fans or football fans. I don't think Green Bay's got that. I don't think people are moving to Green Bay. I think I would almost guarantee more people are moving out of Green Bay than are moving into Green Bay. Yeah, the way you do it is to put a Super Bowl contender on the field, right? Like, isn't that those years there was never a like the team certainly can't blame the fans for selling their tickets as the reason they're losing, because the reason the fans are selling their tickets is because the Seahawks have been largely mediocre for the last decade. They've been like plus mediocre, lower middle class, lower mediocre class, upper mediocre class, whatever the analogy that I'm trying to make is, that's what I mean. Whatever makes sense to you and makes you agree with me, that's the one I meant, not something different. But the game they played on Sunday, first off, the game they played on Thursday, I don't think I talked about that. The game they played against the Cardinals. Are the Cardinals good? This is kind of how I feel about the Huskies, by the way. It's like the Huskies have beat a bunch of teams. Are any of those teams good? The Seahawks beat the Cardinals. Are the Cardinals good? Are the Steelers good? The Cardinals, obviously, if you're not familiar, they lost just a historically unlikely loss, an unlikely comeback yesterday from the Titans. Very funny to watch if you have no rooting interest in the Cardinals. So yesterday's game, Sam Darnold obviously plays great. He has the one interception at the end. I think he was probably He probably got lucky on another one, if I recall right, and then had one that was called back by penalty that I don't know if the penalty. It's hard to say that he was like lucky that the penalty. When a quarterback throws directly to a defensive back and a receiver's on the ground or a receiver significantly out of position, and there is a hold or an illegal contact or a pass interference, it's hard to say that the quarterback got lucky that got called back, because that might be the reason he threw the interception. It might be the reason that it was an incomplete pass and not a large gain, is because there was illegal contact or pass interference or whatever. One thing about that game is, and it's true of Emeka Ibuka too, but like those Ohio State receivers, just if you're the Ohio State coaching staff, like just send this game out to watch Ibuka. I mean, Ibuka was getting open in a way where you're like, there's nobody within. Like Jackson Smith-Njigba was making contested catches, doing a great job, by the way, and Darnold was putting balls exactly where they needed to be. Ibuka was like nobody within 8 yards any direction, like wide open. Is that scheme? Is that his ability to run routes and deceive his man defender? Is it finding soft spots in zones that are, again, that might be scheme? Is it the Seahawks decimation by injury? It's probably some part of all those things. I think Ibuka was pretty widely considered to be a good route runner and a hard worker. I will say that was one. I was not dying for the Seahawks to draft another receiver, especially not after signing Cooper Kupp, already having Jackson Smith-Njigba. I wanted somebody with a complementary skill set, which I think Torrey Horton has turned into for sure. And this is, like I said, post Cooper Kupp signing, but I wanted someone who wasn't another slot guy. But the exception I would have made would have been for Ibuka, because the stories about his work ethic, the local ties, what a great fit he would have been culturally, and I think scheme wise, maybe him and JSN would have clashed. Obviously, they were former college teammates, so maybe not. But man, those guys put on an absolute clinic. And the guys throwing him the ball, too. I mean, Baker Mayfield had a monster game. Sam Darnold had a monster game. Not a lot of balls hitting the ground. The one interception on a ball that hits a defensive lineman's helmet from Sam Darnold that, by the way, Levante David made a great play on. That's not a 100% or 99% probability interception. That's a tough play. I also I want to see if I can find some play-by-play data that suggests this, but it seemed like the Seahawks, after Reek Woolen went out and Eamon Warry went out for a little bit, and Nehemiah Pritchett, I believe, went out for a while, maybe missed the rest of the game went into concussion protocol, so Woolen gets a concussion. Did Nehemiah Pritchett get a concussion? I know he ran into Ernest Jones like he was targeting him. Nehemiah Pritchett, did you have a concussion? I don't mean to sniff directly into the mic, by the way. I'm very sorry. No good. It's no good. Did he end up having a concussion? That's what I want. Did Nehemiah Pritchett concussion? Oh, he did return. Okay. So, but to have Devin Witherspoon out, to have Nick Eamon-Warry out for a chunk of the game, to have Reek Woolen out, the Seahawks are pretty good, it seems to me, at finding depth at corner. Josh Jobe is, not a guy that invested a ton in initially and has turned into like a very quality starter. They tested that yesterday. They tested their depth yesterday. They showed that they're a team that can struggle if they don't have depth at both those positions. And it's the nature of a pass rush, the nature of turnovers. None of them are monocausal. It's not because Devin Witherspoon makes a great play. It's because it can be that can be part of it, but it's because the defensive line put enough pressure on the quarterback that he didn't feel, or he felt like a need to rush the throw, to rush a decision. Maybe he makes a bad decision and ends up throwing a ball off target, or doesn't have the bandwidth to see and identify the defensive back. Like, a lot of things go into it. The pass rush is obviously a huge part of it. Um, Great coverage is another part of it. Having a guy that has good hands, or a guy that a teammate who's plays the tip drill a little bit. Like, a lot of stuff goes into interceptions. A lot of stuff goes into turnovers. A lot of stuff goes into sacks. And I think that you saw the Seahawks kind of live and die by the blitz. This is my memory. I remember seeing a lot more pressure from not the front four after those defensive backs went down. And I think you got to do that. The Seahawks have had a very good defense this year, and I think one of the reasons is because they've gotten a lot of pressure with the front four. They haven't been behind, or like what do you call that? Outnumbered in the defensive backfield very much. And yesterday they had to start to keep pressure on, and to keep the coverage has to be good enough to get a sack, by the way. And yesterday it seemed like that really wasn't going to be possible with the personnel that was injured. I don't have any complaints about what the Seahawks did besides that. I don't think, just a tough game. The offense played great. Sam Darnold looks great. I'm not as hard on the Jalen Milroe fumble as some people are. I actually kind of hope the Seahawks really commit to getting Jalen Milroe the ball in his hands, because there's been does he have 3 snaps? And this one was disastrous, by the way. And the Seahawks lose by 3, and that's a turnover that I believe led to a touchdown. It's hard not to draw if this fumble on the bad pitch doesn't happen, that the Seahawks probably win that game. That might be true. That might be a game-deciding play in that specific game, but it's not going to be in every game. He's not going to fumble a pitch on every game. I hope they don't abandon it. I mean, you want the offense to be effective, so if it's not going to be effective, you get rid of it. But they haven't given it a real shot. What I will say is, I certainly don't want them using a roster spot on a guy that you're going to have on the field for 1 snap. Have him as your emergency third-string quarterback on your inactives if you're only going to use him for 1 snap. But what I would rather see still is the Seahawks. I literally was in my mind, I'm like, I know I'm going to say the wrong team name. I'm very stupid. And then I corrected myself to the wrong name. The one time I was going to use the right name. The only time ever I've used the right name. Did I lose myself? Did I lose my spot in my mind? It's like the bookmark fell out in my mind. Yeah, I don't want the Seahawks to have an active roster spot dedicated to a guy who's getting 1 snap, but I'd also like to see him getting more than 1 snap. The offense is good. The offense has played well. The offensive line has seemed vastly improved. I think PFF agrees, and the lack of sacks. I had my doubts about Sam Darnold's ability to be a true dominant change the game starter, anything more than a game manager, and he's proven me wrong. I even was a guy who was saying he's more athletic than people give him credit for, throws the ball harder than people give him credit for. His average depth of target indicated a guy who could throw the ball downfield. And when you see those target maps that you see with quarterbacks and receivers on occasion, he's throwing it all over the goddamn field. It doesn't seem like there's a throw Sam Darnold is scared to make. None of that should be, I don't know. It doesn't seem like a guy who's going to be rattled if Jalen Milroe comes in for a couple snaps. It doesn't seem like it to me. But anyway, we should briefly talk about the Mark Sanchez thing before we talk about the Huskies. Um, so you wake up in the morning on Saturday, not even in the morning. I'm sitting at Stoop Brewing. The Huskies game's on in the background. I get an alert to my phone. Mark Sanchez got stabbed in Indianapolis. I've been in downtown Indianapolis. I like Indianapolis a lot, by the way. Um, Immediately, all the people you expect start to criticize the city for its downtown policing. Um, Mark Sanchez gets painted as a guy who was a victim of senseless violence for several hours. And then we start to hear about this pretty bizarre story, which is like Mark Sanchez is doing wind sprints in an alley. And then a guy who's at the hotel to pick up their cooking oil, I believe, double parks and gets into an argument and eventually a physical altercation with Mark Sanchez. And the reports that I saw most recently, and obviously the whole thing's evolving. A lot of this could be bullshit, but he gets pepper sprayed, and then the guy that he keeps going after, the guy that pepper sprayed him, and that guy ends up stabbing him, and then Sanchez takes the knife and cuts that guy up. And I think it's very easy. It doesn't take bravery to say what everyone's thinking, right? Like it doesn't take bravery to go, well, his broadcast career is over. It doesn't take bravery to go like, well, the Mariners fucked up this offseason. It takes bravery to have an opinion that contradicts conventional wisdom, that contradicts popular opinion. And I think there's a very good chance that Mark Sanchez is done broadcasting NFL football. Maybe anything. And not even, by the way, my suspicion is, and this is just a kind of a cynical viewpoint of the justice system, perhaps, I don't think Mark Sanchez is going to prison. That's my guess. Not that he doesn't deserve it. I just don't think it's going to happen. The one thing I will say about that is you got to consider how many chances Ryan Leaf got and why. Why would Ryan Leaf get so many chances? Is Ryan Leaf such a dynamic broadcaster that we can't live without his broadcast skills? Mark Sanchez was decent. Is it Ryan Russillo? Somebody a couple years ago who's like back. We like redemption stories. We're gonna find out more details about this, no doubt, but America likes redemption stories. I would not count out Mark Sanchez broadcasting again. And not just because he's like a wealthy, goodish looking dude who knows football and football loves rich, hot dudes, I guess. I got nothing on the Travis Kelce Taylor Swift album, by the way. I've not listened to it. She's obviously bragging on his dick. Good for him. Got to be exciting to have one of the world's biggest pop stars just unprovoked, letting everyone know her boyfriend has a big dick. To be that guy. I frankly don't have an opinion on Bad Bunny being the Super Bowl halftime show. I could not name you a single Bad Bunny song, and I don't say that as a guy that's like, kids these days, this guy's nothing. He's obviously very famous. He also, I did not know, because DaBaby and Bad Bunny, they just share a space in my mind. So, I didn't know that Bad Bunny only sang in Spanish, but I gotta tell you, if the NFL is just straight up trolling, this is the funniest guy they could have booked for the halftime show. It's great. My buddy Josh Firestein was making fun of people who were mad about that. How it's every single year the same people are mad about the halftime show. Just quit fucking watching the halftime show. And then how many people responded to him being like, I don't even watch that game anymore. By the way, and they said some significantly more racist stuff. Like, I don't even watch the NFL anymore. It's a bunch of bullshit. And it's like, okay. It's still very popular. It's still every week some of the top TV events are NFL games. So shut the fuck up. Nobody cares. You don't have to let everyone know. That's like, definitionally it's virtue signaling. Man, you gotta want. I've never done anything drunk that was like life alteringly bad. I I've tried to tell a joke about this on stage. One time I almost landed on my wife. I was very drunk. I was working 7 days a week during the busy season at a factory I was working at. So I'd wake up at it was 7:12s. Um, so I'd wake up at I'd start work at like maybe it was 7:10s, but it was I'd wake up I'd start working at like 4 a.m. and work till I work till 4 p.m. I'd work like long days. And it was like in a period of I don't know, 6 weeks, I had like 2 days off. We finally got to the end of that. I was going to take my wife out to visit my mom in Spokane for the first time. And I get very drunk with my friends at the bar. My wife lives at the time, lived in Ellensburg. So she was going to come. I was going to meet her at our apartment. But in the meantime, I'm going to go have a bunch of drinks with buddies of mine I haven't been able to see in weeks, if not months. We go to the bar. People are buying pitchers. I'm not kidding you, I had probably 13 or 14 Mac and Jacks. And I was skinny back then. I'm fat now. I can put them away. I'm not pretending like I can't handle some beers. At the time, and also I was so busy and so tired. I was not drinking a lot while I worked that schedule. And I came home and I was trying to jump on my bed and I missed my wife athletically midair, landed on my ass, bruised my tailbone, missed a month of work. That's the most life altering thing I've done drunk. This is just like a whole nother level. And it really is one of those things. It's like seeing that. This feels a little bit like when you saw your teacher outside of class, and you're like, "Oh, this is like a person. This is like an alcoholic. This is a person that smokes cigarettes and buys beer at the same grocery store my family shops at." Um, yeah, I mean, just a tragic situation, and I don't know if it was dishonest reporting the early reports, the early condolences that people were sending him. I don't know if everyone knew what was going on, but obviously the story changed quite a bit from the initial reactions that were very sympathetic to Mark Sanchez. Um, okay. The last thing is the Huskies, who were playing while I was drinking and having fun with my wife in Seattle. The Huskies were playing, and I'm kind of monitoring the game on my phone in between eye contact with my wife, and it was very disconcerting. And I remember very vividly seeing a tweet from Spencer Hawes that said at least the basketball team is going to be good this year, as the Huskies were in the fourth quarter down 2 scores, and they obviously come back. Denzel Boston, Damon Williams, Jonah Coleman all play a big role. All the usual suspects, the guys you would expect. Damon Williams, you know, I don't blame him for the struggles that he had against Ohio State necessarily. I just think the Huskies were so outmatched from a talent perspective that it's hard to say like he should have done anything differently or better because he's played well all year. He's taken care of the ball. He's made just some rangy athletic plays that you could never expect a normal quarterback to make. And he's made them, and in some cases made them look pretty easy, and in some cases made them look very dynamic. So it's nice. I hope that I am a little frustrated. Like, what could the Huskies have done? I mean, if they beat Ohio State, certainly they're ranked, right? But that's the number one team in the country. It's a very good team. The chances of the Huskies beating Ohio State were very low. The fact that the Huskies aren't even really getting a ton of consideration for top 25 ranking is a little bit surprising to me. And I guess the reason is like they haven't really put anyone away. Even Washington State, who the score looked pretty one-sided, that was a close game until the fourth quarter. They haven't like really put anyone away of note. And I've seen some friends of mine become very frustrated with Jed Fish. I'd be curious in the comments of this to hear your opinion on Jed Fish because I'm very much in debate because I think Jed Fish is the kind of guy that like if it was 15 years ago and the college football landscape was different, I think I'd be calling for him to whatever be let go. I don't know that there's like a brilliant tactician in Jed Fish, but I do think he's a very good recruiter, and he seems to be a very good fundraiser. He does a lot of the things that you need a modern pro, or a modern pro is not even that far off, a modern college football coach to do. And you can be frustrated with him all you want. I don't know that there's going to be an obviously better option out there. And I also don't know. I mean, if we haven't learned anything from the Jerry DiPoto situation, is there is some value in giving a guy some rope, giving a guy some time to breathe, to develop a system. And by the way, I mean, there's some benefit and there's some harm, right? We saw like Rick Neuheisel just like didn't recruit offensive linemen, is my memory. This is Death to Indy says, I'm a Hurricane fan. LOL. Jed Fish isn't horrible, but not an upper level guy. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I also think, by the way, that the moment the Florida job opens up, and that might happen this offseason, and you got to hope that it's going to happen early in the offseason, I think Jed Fish will dive over Jonah Coleman and Damon Williams. Well, probably not Damon. He'll probably take Damon Williams with him, frankly. That's the other thing about college football that's just so crazy now is Damon Williams probably follows him. But I don't think that Jed Fish is going to have loyalty to the Huskies. He's had, what was the stat? It was like 26 jobs in 28 years or something like that. Like I understand the frustration. I don't think it's because I think he's done a bad job. I think he's done about as good a job as you could have hoped for, considering the lot he was given. And still, I don't know. I don't think Jed Fish is going to preside over the next Huskies college football playoff team, unless that's this year. Okay, please come see me do comedy. I'll be in Everett, Washington next Wednesday. I got some shows coming up at Tacoma Comedy Club. I'm opening for Kristen Key, and I'm hosting for Melissa Villasenor the same weekend. Come on out for that. Those are going to be pretty cool shows. And then follow me on, Death to Indy has another comment. He says, I'd like to see Lane Kiffin hop over to Florida. Yeah, I don't know if I'll be curious to see. I kind of think Lane Kiffin I kind of feel like he's going to take another shot in the NFL. If I was being completely honest with myself, I think that might be the next move for him. I think we're going to see a lot of coaches who used to be a very cushy job to coach in college football, and now we saw with Chip Kelly. Like, Chip Kelly just seemed like a guy who was just fucking done with it. Similar with Nick Saban, where it feels like Nick Saban maybe had a couple more decent years in him, and he's like, I'm just done with all this shit. All right, well, that's it, Indy. Thank you for commenting. Come back next week. I'd love to. I always like when there's shit like this, but I never have a consistent start time because I'm a bad podcaster, so it'll be around this time next week, and maybe again later this week. We'll see what kind of motivation I have. Thank you guys for listening and for watching. And come see me do stand-up comedy. Watch my special, Do Not Shake, on YouTube. Bye. Oh wait, we gotta get a song playing, and bye.